So the former president is standing by his supporters who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, promising to pardon them as soon as he takes office.
The moment we win, we will rapidly review the cases of every political prisoner unjustly victimized by the Harris regime, and I will sign their pardons on day one. I will sign it on day one.
Now I need to go to Lemire on this. Yeah, Jonathan Lemire, you wrote the book on the big lie, and here's Donald Trump talking about the rioters who tried to stop the counting of the electoral votes, the rioters that trashed the United States Capitol, the People's House, the center of democracy in the world, Western democracy, the center of it. And he's getting applause from people who understand that 4 police officers died in the aftermath, that police officers were beaten and bludgeoned and bloodied because of Donald Trump. And even though people don't, like, again, with being plugged into disinformation, like they're in the Matrix, some sort of bizarre Matrix, like, people forget cops getting beaten over and over again. They forget the lies, and they forget that Donald Trump tried to even have his own vice president hurt. That the Secret Service that were guarding Mike Pence that day as they were rushed downstairs and the mob was searching for them and they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and they retreated into another room. Yeah, Secret Service that were with Mike Pence were calling their families, saying they probably weren't going to see them again because they thought they were going to be killed by this mob. So when Donald Trump calls these people patriots, and more damningly says he's going to pardon people that beat the hell out of police officers, and you have audiences cheering in America, what does that tell you?
I think the phrase here we need to focus on is laying the groundwork. We mentioned earlier how in 2016, it began that summer. Trump began to lay the groundwork to question the integrity of the election. He did end up winning. He did so again in 2020, that time earlier. He's doing it again now about the election, but he's also laying the groundwork potentially for more violence, because that message over the weekend is not just about pardoning those on January 6th. He's suggesting to those who might commit acts of violence for him in the future that he'd offer pardons for them as well, were he to be elected.
Hey, and Jonathan, why is Donald Trump not talking about inflation here? Why is he going in areas that we heard, his campaign staff didn't want him to go into? Because Donald Trump, people tuning in, well, why are they talking about January the 6th on Monday morning in September? Why aren't they talking? Because he's bringing this up. Because he's focusing on January the 6th. Because he's focusing on political violence. Because he's focusing on spreading the big lie. Because he's focusing on violence. And so he's doing that for a reason. We didn't even show the clip where he talked about in his mass deportations how they were going to be, quote, bloody. Jonathan, he is choosing to speak on violence, on riots, on the undermining of American democracy. He is making that choice. He is leaning into that in his final stretch in the campaign. Why?
That's his closing argument right now, because there is fears he could lose, because this race is so close. And it's not a given that he's going to lose, but we know, I've talked to people around him, he is concerned he might. He knows his freedom is on the line. And we know that he has received one legal win after another, and now we know his New York sentencing won't happen until after the election either. But at this point, those delay tactics, as successful as they've been so far, well, if he were to lose in November, well, then it doesn't matter again, because all those cases spring back to life, and he won't have the power of the presidency to make them go away. So there is real panic there. And he's trying to both, first of all, relitigate 2020, suggesting that he still didn't lose, and defend those who rioted on his behalf. But he's setting up a permission structure for it to happen again.
Correct.
He is choosing these the talk about this. We're not. We're simply reporting what he had to say. He is choosing it again. And we know, and let's talk again about that social media post from over the weekend. It couldn't be more dangerous, where he's suggesting that those who opposed him in 2016, 2020, in his words, who cheated, and again saying those who are cheating this time around, were he to win, he will arrest, he will imprison at great length. And then you combine this with his deportation policies. These are the two biggest police movements this nation has ever seen. This is undemocratic and deeply dangerous.
But and he's talking about anybody that's working for Kamala Harris, lawyers that are working for Kamala Harris, people who contribute money to Kamala Harris, those people, political operatives, those people he says he's going to send to jail. And again, it's just more of the same. And you have people who are you talk about permission structures.
Yeah.
Trump's giving them the permission structure to riot, to lead to the death of more police officers, to trash maybe the Capitol again, who knows? But again, where does that permission structure come from? That comes from cable news and online talkers that will tell you that January 6th was nothing. It was much ado about nothing. And also, who have said, if we lose, we need to start a civil war, that we need to stop, according to them, they say we need to stop depending on voting and need to start a war.
Yeah. So the question
on some of the most popular programs.
The question for debate monitors, but also for former Republican presidents and members of former Republican administrations. Is this the guy you're going to say nothing about? Is this the guy who you want leading the Republican Party?